Everyone, if you follow behavioral observations on Instagram, you might recall that I recently had a once in a lifetime opportunity to travel to the 20th annual Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis conference. They were gracious enough to ask me to close out the event with the last presentation of the meeting. I could devote an entire podcast episode to talking about all the wonderful people I met, the fun experiences I had, and the amazing sights I was able to take in. One of the biggest highlights, though, was the opportunity to sneak in the following conversation I had with a panel of employees from Hawaii's Department of Education. It turns out that the state of Hawaii is doing some really innovative work in bringing to bear specific behavioral technologies to improve the supports provided to children in school settings. This work is organized into a large-scale endeavor that they have named the CARE Project. This panel consisted of Alicia Kim, Dodie Pritchett, Joshua Hoppe, and Shireen Hajiro. And before getting any further into this introduction, I want to thank my friends Katie Croakey and Jamie Salter from Self and Match for not only nudging us to have this conversation in the first place, but for also financially supporting it with a generous donation to HABA. So what did we talk about? Well, we got into the ways in which the Hawaii Department of Education differs from other state departments of ed. That might sound a little wonky and frankly dry, but it's actually kind of fascinating in a weird way. Just trust me. We talked about the specific problems the CARE project was designed to address. We talked about the mindset shift from that, took them from responding to problem behavior to preventing problem behavior. We talked about their collaboration with organizations like FTF and Emergent Learning. We went through specific case studies of successful interventions and how the DOE is collecting data for a large-scale research study. We talked about the challenges of scaling these interventions in the face of staff turnover and how they turned the term PFA-SBT from a noun into a verb. So there's a little bit of something for everyone in here. Even if you don't work in schools, there's some interesting nuggets just about organizational behavior management and how do you scale things, across a large system. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. Before we get into the episode itself, I want to give a shout out to the following sponsors for making this podcast available. Of course, there's the aforementioned Self and Match, certainly, but we're also brought to you by Frontera. So consider taking a demo of their assessment builder and see how the ethical application of AI can help you serve clients and save you time. If you want to learn more, go to fronterahealth.com to check it out. We're brought to you by CEUs from yours truly, Behavioral Observations. Yes, my kids in college will thank you for it. All kidding aside, learn on the go from your favorite podcast guests, all while you're commuting, walking the dog, or doing whatever else you do while listening to podcasts. I've added some new events recently, so check them out over at behavioralobservations.com/get-CEUs. We're also brought to you by Mind Body Behaviors Certified Health Coaching Program. If you're a BCBA looking to use your ABA skills to help people live healthier lifestyles, learn how to do it the right way with expert instruction, mentoring, and guidance from Sarah Burby. Podcast listeners can save money by using the code BOP10 at checkout. So go to behavioralobservations.com and just find the show notes for this episode. The links will be waiting there for you. We're brought to you by Behavior University, and boy, do they have, I don't know if I'm spoiling it or not, but they've got an RBT course that's just been revised and revamped that is unlike anything else out there. I'm going to get more into detail about the RBT course in subsequent episodes, but they've shared a little bit with what they've shared with me about it. It is going to blow your mind. So go to behavioruniversity.com/observations to check out not only their RBT course, their supervision course, their on-demand and live webinars, and lots more. That's behavioruniversity.com/observations. And once you're there, you can use the promo code podcast to save at checkout. All right, last but not least, I swear we're getting to the conversation. Just one more, please. And this one I'm really, really excited about because it's the 2026 Verbal Behavior Conference. It's taking place March 26th and 27th in Austin, Texas, and it's going to be brought to you on demand or live streamed through the magic of Behavior Live. This is an all-star cast of everyone in the world of verbal behavior, and it includes Doctors Mark Sundberg, Patrick McGreevy, Kaio Miguel, Alice Schillingsberg, Sarah Frampton, and Teresa D'Souza, and Danielle LaFrance. They're going to share how Skinner's analysis of verbal behavior can guide the assessment and treatment of generative learning challenges in children with autism and other developmental disabilities. You're not going to want to miss it. And for those who attend, those loyal people who attend online, man, if you can make it down there to Austin, it is really, really something. So you can go to behaviorlive.com and just search VBC, or you can just go to the show notes for this episode. All right. Thanks for bearing with me through those opening remarks. So without any further delay, please enjoy this conversation I had with my new best friends in Hawaii. All right, let's go.
Welcome to the Behavioral Observations Podcast, stimulating talk for today's behavior analysts. Now, here's your host, Matt Sikoria.
All right, we're here with a very rare live panel discussion taking place in Waikiki at the 20th Annual Hawaii Association for Behavior Analysis Conference. We've got a panel of DOE employees, and we're going to talk about a very special project that they've been involved in. We also want to give some shout outs to Behavior Live for helping us record this, especially the man, the myth, the legend, Wade Allen, and then also the lovely ladies at Self and Match for sponsoring this opportunity for us. Having said that, let's get into it. So what I'd like to do is first, I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about what your role is at the Hawaii Department of Education, and then we'll explore this CARE project in a little bit more detail.
Sure. I'll start. My name is Joshua Hoppe. I am an educational specialist in the Department of Education. I work for the Intensive Program Support Section, which is under the Office of Student Support Services. So we help with special education, and I'm working on the autism and ABA programs in the department. And I'll give it over to my boss, Alicia.
I'm Alicia Kim. I'm the administrator of the Intensive Program Support Section. Our section really supports our students in the department with the most intensive needs, be that academics, behavior, social emotional concerns, mental health, things like that. So our overall program focuses on many different things, but for today, we're going to be focusing more on our CARE project and our ABA program.
Hi, I am Shireen Hajero. I was just recently hired to be part of this amazing team of Intensive Program Support Section. I got it right. Yes. So I'm a behavior analyst with the state team. I'm going to pass it to Dodie.
Aloha, I'm Dodie Pritchett. I am also a member of this wonderful team. I'm a behavior analyst teacher, and just thrilled to be here working with these guys and making a difference in the DOE here in Hawaii.
All right. So again, we're going to get into this project that you guys have been involved in, but I think for most listeners, they're not going to be familiar with the Hawaii DOE and the Department of Education and how that might be different than how other states set up their departments of education, their school districts, and et cetera. So can you guys give us like an overview of how the state works as it relates to providing educational services to school-age kids?
Sure, I can start. So Hawaii is fairly unique in that we're a unitary system. So that means we are one state educational agency and local educational agency where we're just considered one very large school district. But how we operate is probably going to be fairly similar to how other states operate in that we also have districts, and those districts are divided into kind of sub-districts or what we call complex areas. But what that means for our team here, we're part of the state office. So we play kind of a dual role sometimes. So rather than just being the state educational agency, we also do play some roles in like the local educational agency where we have a little bit more, I guess, influence over programs, curriculum, things like that are being disseminated at the school level.
I see. All right. Well, I appreciate that. That gives a bit more context for the rest of the discussion. So with regard to the CARE project, I do want to get into details of that, but I want to learn more about the why why did you embark on this? What were the challenges that Hawaii was facing specifically that led you to bring all these various resources into the state? Well, again, we'll talk about what those resources are, but I want to learn more about the motivation to do this in the first place. So tell us what sort of problems that you all were trying to solve.
I mean, I guess I can start from the high level and then everyone can share their own kind of personal thoughts and experiences around that. But I think as the State Department of Education, what we were seeing, especially after students were coming back from COVID, there was a lot more behavior challenges in the classroom. Teachers were getting burnt out. We had high turnover of staff in our classrooms. And people really started to just focus on the challenging behaviors. And we really wanted to reframe and reshift, the focus on our skill acquisition and what behaviors are we actually teaching rather than the problems in the classroom, and really building our teachers' tool belts up as well as our BCBAs, and looking at that collaboration between our BCBAs and school teams. I think we also wanted to get away from compliance heavy instruction and really looking more at how we can really disseminate HRE, or our students being happy, relaxed, engaged during the school day, wanting to come to school, feeling safe at school, being able to communicate with their school teams, things like that. So we wanted to really move towards a compassionate care approach.
That's a good answer. I think too, it sort of evolved. It started, so like to Alicia's point, we typically get brought in, or our team would get brought in for consultation or to support the districts once behavior, and for a subset of the population, not all behavior across the board, but particularly students with intellectual disabilities and autism, usually in sort of restrictive settings and high levels of behavior. And then we get brought in and it's like, oh, well, how do we do this? And staff weren't, our sort of traditional models of even ABA, which is a whole nother can of worms of how the way that we deliver ABA in schools is also probably different. And that we have, I think, 295 schools. I think there's over, well over 1,000 RBTs across all of the schools. And a lot of them are working one-on-one with kids all day. Sometimes they get to do two-on-one. So we'll start off, there's a kid with an RBT doing all day ABA. And then there's two-on-one. And then we're getting called in and there's these high intensity behaviors. And so we were looking for sort of another, a good training approach. And so we started doing cohorts with FTF to do staff training back in 2022. And so we did 6. And Shireen and Dodi were both in the original cohorts. And we had a lot of success. And then so from there, and also like Dr. Dixon had also been working, building language programs and doing a lot of work in the Windward district with Aletha. And then he'd also started training districts. And so over time, those two approaches kind of blended as maybe like a sort of, not a standard approach, but like we're looking at like what's best practices for when we're getting these kids to make sure that, to Alicia's point, we're focusing on, assent. We're trying to get students to want to be in school, to students feeling successful, but also like from the standpoint of building skills, not just reducing behavior or like putting staff on cases because behavior is out of control and we just want to get the behavior down.
Hey everyone, I want to take a quick break here to introduce Behavior University's newly revised RBT course, RBT 3.0. It's built by BCBAs and designed for real-world learning. Their updated RBT course delivers everything you need to prepare for success. So there's updated BCBA design content that reflects the latest ABA practices. The format is flexible and self-paced, so you can fit it in depending on your schedule needs. There are topic-focused lessons that teach core concepts in depth. Video modeling of ABA interventions to bring these things to life. Application activities and immediate feedback to reinforce understanding. And there's a comprehensive PDF study guide with outlines, key terms, and reflection questions. And for supervisors, Behavior University has added powerful new tools to make your job easier. They've unlocked course access so you can refer to your trainees' progress. There's a supervisor dashboard to track trainee progress and performance. There's a comprehensive BCBA manual with annotated outlines and supervision activity ideas. And you can assign and reuse courses for new hires effortlessly. So if you want to learn more, go to behavioruniversity.com. And if you want to save some money at checkout, whether it's for the RBT course, their supervision course, or their amazing on-demand and live webinars, use the promo code podcast. Again, that's behavioruniversity.com. All right, let's get back to my friends in Hawaii.
It just, what Josh was saying made me think of something too, that I think because we support both our districts, complex areas, and schools, we also wanted to provide a more, I think, systematic way to address, kind of their pain points, and really looking at how can we leverage even like organizational behavior management techniques to really like translate and help schools actually create a sustainable system that they're not just putting band-aids on their quote unquote problems, like these students who are engaging in high behaviors. So I think, we wanted to make it so that it was accessible to schools, but also in like a systematic way. So that way they understood what was happening. They were part of the process. They could see the bigger picture. Because I think historically, the department kind of followed a more like train and hope model where it was just like, we're going to just give you this training and hope you guys do it. But, we know that that's not reality. And so we wanted to really focus more on implementation and coaching to make it stick and to make it something that sustains across.
So while Josh and Alicia gave a broader picture, so I want to be part of this CARE project because I think I mentioned earlier when I was presenting, the schools very quickly look into a very more restrictive environment for students. So when I started PFASBT, I worked on one student, kindergarten, and already the school team says that, no, this kid is going to go in, what do you call it, an alternative learning center. And this is a kindergarten. So I was like, well, what does the ALC look like? And I'm like, oh, well, you have like, fifth graders. I'm like, and this is a little cute baby boy with, am I allowed to like say what the student said? Like, that's kind of some curses. Should I edit that?
Yes.
So, this is one kid, kindergarten. He stood at the door and he had a gun, with his hand. And he goes, that B, which is the teacher, has to die. And I was like, wow, right context of contextually appropriate, but inappropriate, the language. So where is this kid going? He's going to an alternative learning center and looking at the peer model, what is he going to end up learning? The skill.
It's going to be a graduate program for problem behavior.
Exactly. And, I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw a visual on LinkedIn and they talk about when you start secluding kids and you start isolating kids, the pathway to that is pretty much they're going to be incarcerated. So I was like, so I picked that student and he was not diagnosed with ASD. He was diagnosed with ODD, but non-specific. And so he's got to be re-diagnosed again. So I was like, I want to do that, kiddo. And so we did. We were in the original bunch of PFASBT. He picked it up. Even parents like, I don't think he needs an RBT anymore. So they slowly faded ABA from him.
Are you at BCBA feeling overwhelmed by the time and energy it takes to complete intake assessments for kids with autism? You're not alone. When hours are spent on paperwork instead of providing care, it slows everything down for you and the families counting on you. That's why Frontera exists. Frontera is an AI-driven, HIPAA-compliant platform designed specifically for ABA professionals like you. Built by Amal Deshpande, a seasoned founder and father to a child with autism, Frontera brings together clinicians and engineers to streamline the most time-consuming parts of your job. So what does that actually look like? With Frontera's smart tools like the Assessment Builder and Diagnosis Builder, you can reduce your report writing workload from 8 to 10 hours to just 3 to 4. That's more time for therapy, faster access to services, and less burnout. Visit fronterahealth.com to see how it works. Use code BOP25 at checkout to get 15% off both of our report writing tools. Let Frontera help you work smarter so you can focus on what matters most. I see. So before we get too far down into specifics, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So the CARE project is an implementation, kind of like a reframing of how behavior is understood and managed in the state using the principles of, practical functional assessment, skills-based treatment, and the various technologies from PEAK and AIM, accept, identify, and move. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that the audience is with us because you guys are knee deep in this, and I want to make sure no one's left behind. And so in doing that, what made you choose this amongst other alternatives that are out there? I mean, clearly there are things like PBIS and other types of multi-tiered systems of support. What drew you to these? And I'll just call them technologies, I suppose. I mean, obviously there's specific companies that provide these training and supports and whatnot, but like what led you to choose these amongst other alternatives that are out there?
So I think before I got into this role, I was in the field as a behavior analyst. And I think these methodologies in particular, I do think that there is also a big emphasis in our school system and other whole branches that support with PBIS and like just general positive behavioral strategies, intervention and supports like that are in alignment with PBIS. In fact, we have this whole HMTSS framework, Hawaii multi-tiered system of support, and student support process that happens before special ed evaluations and dealing with behavior. And it is a little, we are trying to move in a direction where things are not so siloed, but it has been kind of fragmented. And so I think initially we are sort of focused on these higher end kids who are getting this direct ABA service in school. And I had sort of seen and implemented a lot of the more traditional ABA approaches, and they work, but there was a lot of, staff burnout was an issue, incident reports, people getting injured, some of the procedures, which, not to say that other alternative ways that aren't SBT would have worked, but I sort of started learning more about PFA SBT and I got really interested in. I started implementing it a little bit, and I realized, kind of you need I had some success doing it in the field, and but you need really supervision, right? Like it's an ethical thing of like, how do you get access to enough supervision and training? And so when I sort of shifted position and had the opportunity to explore providing some of that, that's kind of where it started. So I think that was kind of how the selection worked, of like, we sort of have what we were doing. We had some collective experience of like, some of this stuff is not working for a lot of these kids, and what other options are there? And so that's sort of the one that we tried first, and we had a lot of success with it. So we're like, oh, how do we scale this up? Because this seems to be working for us.
Hi, everyone. Sarah here from Mind Body Behavior. Sorry to interrupt your podcast, but if you're a BCBA dealing with insurance headaches, canceled sessions, and constant authorization battles, I have something that could change everything. I know you've been told ABA can be applied anywhere, but no one's given you the actual roadmap until now. Mind Body Behavior is the first and only nationally board-approved health coaching program designed specifically for BCBAs and RBTs. We cover weight management, chronic disease, mental health, all from a behavior analytic perspective with deep integration of ACT and RFT. This 6-month program includes weekly live sessions plus on-demand content. You'll get 32 continuing education units, including ethics and supervision, and it follows the BCBA content outline. We've already had over 90 BCBAs graduate and successfully start their career shifts. Registration for the spring cohort is now open, and Behavior Observations listeners get 15% off tuition. Stop dreaming about applying the science you love in new ways and start doing it so you can fall in love with your career again. Go to mindbodybehavior.co/board health coach for more information and to save your spot, or check out the link in the show notes.
Well, that's an excellent question. How do you scale it up? I know you guys are investing a lot of resources in bringing people out here to train, but can you talk about how, when you're implementing something statewide, that's a big endeavor. So can you share maybe some experiences from trying to scale these interventions?
Yeah. Do either of you want to talk about your experiences first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we've learned a lot over time. So the basic premise was, as Alicia mentioned earlier, we really want to do an implementation training. We don't want to learn all about it and then develop an on-demand module that you just watch and then, okay, here you have the tool, go do it. We've sort of learned that hey, there's a lot of, in SBT, there's so many conditional discriminations that need to happen moment to moment, and you have to change things so much depending on the learner, and it's really complex stuff. And so providing a framework for supporting staff through successful implementation so that they really felt that they were competent was a priority. But of course, we can't do that all at once. So we started with an opt-in model of hey, we're sponsoring this training. This is what it's about. Who wants to sign up? So we got the people that were the most motivated right out the gate, which is great for us because that gives us a little momentum. These people really want to do it. And I think I kind of want you guys to talk about some of the challenges that you faced to kind of frame like some of the adjustments we're making moving forward to try and scale it, if that's okay.
All right, let's hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And I'll take just a little half step back too, to just, you were asking about, this part of the motivation behind this. And as Josh mentioned, we opted in because number one, we were excited to learn a new modality. Number two, we were seeing results, and we had listened to, Dr. Hanley and started looking into his research, and the results really speak for itself, and we all wanted to be a part of that. So we started drinking the Kool-Aid in this process, and Shireen and I are drunk on to be honest with you, we're drunk. We can't have a conversation without talking about HRE and the DOE, bringing the joy. So part of the motivation too, I'm just keeping it kind of simple but real, is like it's an opportunity to bring joy back to the classroom. And we're doing that through the science of behavior analysis, through the foundational work of Dr. Greg Hanley and Dr. Dixon. So that was really exciting for me. Because experiencing, we were talking about some of the problems and the challenges that kind of led us to this point too. And, we were talking about the FBA term that your friend coined with, and I like to think of Oprah Winfrey with you get an RBT and you get an RBT. And, Josh was telling us like we've got 1,000 plus RBTs across the state in an isolated region of the world where resources are slim. And considering our model that spreads across the state as one district, yet the resources get kind of concentrated on one island where all the people are. And we've got rural communities that aren't accessing those same resources. That good luck trying to find an RBT in Kohala, on the Hamakua coast and rural Hawaii Island. So we're coming in as teachers and practitioners, seeing this non-sustainable system at work and looking for solutions. And like I said, so that brings us back to, our drunkenness on PFA SBT, where it all began for us, and about barriers. So, as you guys know, enthusiasm isn't enough to make it to the finish line in these types of projects and public schools where the challenges are real and they're daily. So enthusiasm got us started, and we really had to learn the art of collaboration and preparation. The barriers with getting the team of folks to shift the mindset, to embrace this idea. And again, we're working at one classroom, one teacher, one student at a time. But what we quickly came to find out is we needed the entire school to be on board. We needed the administrative team to be kind of leading this charge, not necessarily the details of the implementation, but supporting the process, providing the space, allowing the teacher to participate in the hours of instruction and meetings and to build the collaboration that was necessary to start this implementation in a public school setting where the variables are so much more dramatic than in a clinic or another more controlled setting. So part of my personal experience, I think Shireen can speak to this as well, was getting the administrative staff. So the amount of, talking and meetings and preparation to get them on board and to get the whole, as there's multiple players in an IEP team to communicate to the IEP team, to the family, to the teachers, to the other teachers, down the hall, to everyone, to get the mindset to start to shift. And as sometimes when us behavior analysts enter the classroom, sometimes we're met with, oh, here they come with their, bag of goodies to just let the kid run around and do whatever they want.
Or what I get, you should have been here yesterday.
Yeah.
Or 5 minutes after you left, if I had a nickel for every time I've heard that.
They're always good when you're here.
Yeah. So let me ask you that, because I see, and this, I think this is maybe an observation that I've had with a number of types of different school reforms where you have these institutional cheerleaders. And when those people move on to other positions or retire or maybe find some other vocation to pray, that a lot of these systems that people work so hard to put in place without that local person making it all work, all that hard work can kind of wither on the vine a little bit. Is that something that you guys worry about?
Well, Josh and Alicia can never die.
Step one,
Yeah.
don't die.
So not only do we worry about it, we experience it, right?
Okay.
Like we've already experienced it. Like I will just say, I feel that we're like blessed on this team to have, the people that we have. And I always tell Alicia, like, if you leave, I'm done. I'm going back to the field. I'm going to go work close to home. I'm not driving. But seriously, since like our initial cohort was like 18 staff, right? And I know that we had some attrition, right? Like probably 4 or 5 of those people are no longer working in the department.
Mhm.
We have about, at best, I think it used to be 20%. I think now it's closer to 10% of our actual ABA staff are DOE staff. The rest, and 85, 90% are contracted. So that presents a problem when you're trying to do institutional reform because we've got 18 vendors with their own training processes that they're on our contract and we ultimately are supervising their work through what the IEP is disseminating. So anyway, long story short, like it's a huge problem. And so Dodie and Shireen were 2 of our first trainers. So that was kind of the process too of like, we don't just need to have FTF come and train. We need our own trainers. And then the original intent was every sort of complex area has their own trainer and can support the local school teams. But, as we're losing staff, we're running into issues. And I think one area that we've shifted now, which I would, Dodie and Shireen can talk about more, but is the professional development for teachers. So we're trying to make this not just a behavior analyst driven process, because I think our initial failings, and we actually learned a lot from Tina Gunn from Surrey School District. She came out and presented when we did our initial cohort. And they did a similar thing where they did a 3-year implementation. And the first thing they realized is like, we don't have generalization sites. And school site buy-in is a big barrier. So they had sort of developed their own sort of site assessment process. And so we tweaked that process. Tina was generous enough to share all her resources with us. And we sort of created our own version of that. And so now this version of the process, when people are coming into the PD, they have to complete an ecological assessment of like, is it a good fit for this kid? Is the school site ready to do it? Is the administrator involved? Are they willing to commit to boom, 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 boom? And then, of course, for the reinforcement side, there we have what's called teacher reclass credits, where teachers can move up the pay scale. And so we're trying to, given what, like we, Polly and Anika, and we do the training on like our systems and OBM, like what's the reinforcer? How are we getting these overworked teachers bought into like doing all this stuff to learn it? And so we are now finally able to offer PD credits. I don't know if you guys want to talk about the course more, but it's awesome.
Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit. And I was thinking about, one of the things that speaker said earlier today about a Band-Aid, how oftentimes we put a Band-Aid fix on a problem, but the problem with the Band-Aid is it comes off in the shower. And so, that's the problem with the previous model, that was described with training and capacity building and dissemination. So we're developing, a system that is not a Band-Aid fix. So it's going to take a while to build, but we're in it for the long haul, and the lasting impact, will speak for itself. So as far as reinforcement through the course, we've really modeled a lot of, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So we've learned a lot of valuable lessons through our consultation with FTF. Right now, working with Dr. Teresa Fiani and Dr. Claire Egan. They've been incredible coaches in this process. And so we've modeled a lot of our capacity building, including this course, off of the training model that FTF offers, which is really hits on this organizational behavior management component that Alicia was describing too, where we're not just one and done, and we're in there and we're really boots on the ground training in there on the daily with these teachers and RBTs and support staff. So that's number one, is just recreating the process and tweaking it in our state and in our schools, which are very different across the state, mind you, as well, to make it work for our communities. So the course is also in combination with the CARE project today. So we're, talking about all the dots on the axes, trying to connect at a point. We've taken the FTF framework and made it into a class that in our system had to be divided into three credit courses. So we just launched it this week and it'll go on for the rest of the year. And we have allowed the participants the opportunity to have their data be considered for the longitudinal research study, in which we'll be evaluating the combined effects of the PFA SBT framework and the Peak and AIM curriculum in the branches.
Well, that'll be quite a contribution to the existing literature for sure, and we'll have to reconnect once you have those data to talk about. And yeah, I'd be really looking forward to hearing how that shakes out. Hey everyone, the 2026 Verbal Behavior Conference is coming up March 26th and 27th in Austin, Texas. Or you can join us virtually via live stream and on demand through Behavior Live. Hear from some of the biggest names in the field: Drs. Mark Sundberg, Patrick McGreevy, Kyle Miguel, Alice Schillingsberg, Sarah Frampton, Andresa D'Souza, and Danielle France. And they're going to explore how Skinner's analysis of verbal behavior can transform the assessment and treatment of generative learning challenges in children with autism and other developmental disabilities. Plus, don't miss the special pre-conference workshop on Wednesday, March 25th, led by Dr. Emily Kerwin and Gina Zakantiri from All Points Behavior, formerly the Carbone Clinic. Early registration is open now, but only for a limited time. Grab your ticket today and join the leading minds in behavior analysis at the 2026 Verbal Behavior Conference. Is there anything else kind of like either structural or foundational about this project that we want to talk about? Because I do want to get into like some quick case studies. I know you guys had an awesome panel. I was happy to watch you guys, really talk about some really cool cases and some of the successes that you've had. But again, I want to make sure if there's anything else you want to say about the project before we get into like some quick case studies, I want to give you the opportunity to tell the audience about it.
Sure. I think one area that we're hoping to gain from the project, I think I might have mentioned this a little bit before, but part of like we're using this Omnia screener or assessment. It's sort of like Dr. Dixon developed it, and it looks at behavior, and it also looks at all of the, RFT skills and the basic verbal behavior skills. And so it's sort of like we're doing it pre and post. But within that, I think, and knowing that like, because Emergent comes on and they help like based on the results of the assessment, sort of assign the different branch skills to the student based on like kind of what their profile is. And I think long term, what we're hoping is to kind of see if we can have an assessment process where when up front we do these pre-assessments, we sort of learn through this process like what sort of dosage of service might be needed, what sort of like skills are critical to target or better, and like sort of have a better idea so that we can help the field make more solid recommendations after they do their assessment about what type of IEP services a student might need. So that's one component that we're hoping to kind of glean from the study. If we get enough data, that we are definitely very interested in learning, because it's not always clear. I think a lot of behavior analysts, they're sort of, when they do an FBA in the school, they're sort of like, oh, this team really wants an RBT and behaviors are really bad, so I'm going to just recommend like all day services. But it's like, it's hard to, and there's other processes that we're doing to also outside of this project aid with that. But I think just having a big data set of kids that went through it, and where we kind of know like this seems to work really well or this doesn't seem to work, is something that we're hoping to get out of the project as well.
Yeah. I think this is something that's more, I guess, high level, but it might hit on some of the previous questions you were asking. I think I just wanted to add that I think why we're putting so much time and resources into this CARE project is because it very much aligns to our values. And I think, one of the bigger kind of dreams, right, is that we really want to change the hearts and minds of our educators, of how we engage and how we serve our students. And really, like Dodie said, bring the joy. And school being fun, school being a great place for students to be, them feeling safe, and more importantly, feeling like they belong. in that school, in that community. And I think, through initiatives like the CARE Project, really showing that, hey, this can be successful and this is why it's important, and bringing our educators back to their values and how that aligns to their job and their role as educators. So that way, we don't lose sight of that, because it can be really easy to lose sight of that when you have a student who's engaging in really, really dangerous behavior every day. And so, remembering that, hey, yeah, you have a support system, and let's remember why you're here, because I choose to believe that every educator didn't go into education because they hate kids. Like in there, it's because they love and care about our students, and so it's bringing them back to their why. But
I appreciate you adding that. All right. So let's go through, and if you guys can tell us, run down through a particular case, or maybe it's a teacher you worked with that maybe change their perspective on how they view problem behavior, or a behavior analyst who changed their approach. Just give like a quick example of, something that like a meaningful behavioral change that you guys have seen throughout this process of implementation.
Who's going to go first? Shereen? We're going to fight over the mic. I want to tell my story.
All right, go.
No, I'm just kidding.
So I got a couple of stories. You saw the panel earlier. And so that student didn't come to school. And that student, somebody reported him because he grabbed a woman's shirt and tore it off on the train. Can't go out in the community. So that case in itself, I think we were able to shift the mindset of the school team, because they were very quick to call Josh and, the state school, Paul Keller. She's just like, hey, you guys got to take him. And I think they did reach out to Paul Keller, I believe, to say this kid cannot be on campus.
And what is that? Is that like a residential school, or is that some sort of alternative school setting or something like that here?
Paul Keller is a state level public separate facility. So it's like a special program that's ABA based.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. Thank you.
So they reached out to Paul Keller and said, you got to take this kid. And so Paul Keller, I think, came, we had discussions and we were like, no, I think you got to try least restrictive intervention first. And so this is available and let's do it. And so the school team was like, all right, let's go ahead and try this. The BCBA then on that program actually said, hey, at what point in time are we also going to reach out to residential programs out of state? Because when you're looking at the student, the quality of the student's life and the parents, we got to address that. And I'm like, number one, have you spoken to the parents? Because the parents love this kid. I don't see any way we can ever, I don't feel comfortable talking to a parent about, hey, let's ship your kid off to the rest, somewhere in the mainland. So we did PFASBT, and how I learned PFASBT was different from how I implemented on this case. When we talk about, functional communication, FCR, we talk about tolerance. And then the next thing is relinquishing as well as transitioning. We did not even do that for this student because no way was he ready to relinquish his tent, and he was not transitioning anyway. So we just bypassed that. And then we went to, presenting task, and the task looks different. And then when he was ready to relinquish the tent, when he was ready to transition, that's when we started bringing everything back. School team loves it. Right now, sometimes I go in, just have fun with the kiddo. But right now, another BCABA who's implementing generalizing with him. And now they're actually looking into bringing him back full day by the end of this quarter. So school team, loves it. Dad loves it. He goes, this has been transformational. Like he calls PFASBT because it's a mouthful. This is a special program. That's what he says about PFASBT. And he says it transformed his family's life. They actually took a trip to the Philippines for a wedding. And so I keep telling Dad, what's the number one thing that we're going to do? He goes, turn off the behavior. Like right on. So, you see parents loving how the kid is now they went to Arby's and sat down. He goes, I got my son back. And I'm like, right on. School teams are just like, all right, do you think we should PFASBT that kiddo too and the other one? So now I find it.
So it's now a verb.
Should we PFASBT that one, Shireen? And I'm like, if we have the capacity, we're going to PFASBT everybody, because you know what? We got to bring joy back to learning. I want students to opt in. This is one kiddo who comes into school. Can I stay longer? I'm like, dude, I want to get out of school. You want to stay. That is one story. I mean, administrators love it. BCBA. So she saw the whole process and she goes, can't even believe I suggested that. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great. All right, Dodie, I know you're champing at the bit to tell a story here. So,
and I just want to like piggyback too, like, you know, Shireen has really inspired like an entire district on Oahu. Yeah. Like, so once they saw the results of the work she was doing, all the DESs started reaching out and saying, let's SPT these kids and let's SPT this kids. Yeah.
Because I'm dying to say more. I mean, like, come on.
Well,
like, how much time
we also,
do we have?
okay. Yeah,
I know, sorry.
Quickly.
Okay, very quickly.
We should be quick about this.
Dang it. Sorry. So just like what Alicia was saying, like sustainability. And I think that's what Leeward District in Oahu is looking at, because they were saying that, you know, Shireen, like, you're not with us anymore, but this is not going to disappear because we can go anywhere. But, you know, they're still going to get students with, you know, these challenging behaviors. And so the practices, the treatment has to say, so they were really quickly to be on board. And we started presenting to the CAS, and the CAS told us, and CAS is Complex Area Superintendent, said, we got to have this. And if you guys come up with any barriers, come talk to me. Let's see how we can get the solutions in. So they're even looking at some now being very intentional in those LBAs who received this training when I trained them as my train the trainer cohort. The DS is now probably looking at like, now you're going to go be at one school, so you don't have to keep traveling. And we're going to have those SBT classroom in that school. And those are the schools with typically very high rates of challenging behaviors. So, you know, so when you look at, you know, longitudinal, that's where they're looking at. We're not just like, okay, the train is gone, like, all right, we're going to leave, but they're planning for the future. They're planning for it to be continuous. So, yeah. Okay, now you can have them.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. And on the sustainability piece too, I'll just share that coming in with this framework gives us not just solutions to deal with really challenging situations, but a means to fade the intensive supports out, because that's the goal, is empowerment and independence, joy. And, you know, before, at least in my experience, you know, that was oftentimes missing, right? And there's sort of this common theme that if a student was assigned an RBT, it was sort of like Velcroed to them for the rest of their school academic career. And what's that saying, you know, about their skill progression and all of that? And by the time the students hit middle school and high school, they don't want that a lot of times to be the case. So my very first experience with this framework, our student, we were able to fade support services within 2 years. And this was severe challenging behavior. The student could only come on campus for a couple hours a day, had to have 3 adults on him. And this is a kindergartner. 3 adults on him with their running shoes tied on because of the elopement and to the dangerous situations and the aggressive behavior. And through this process, we were able to not only teach the skills in a joyful and compassionate process, but systematically generalize and maintain the behavior and then fade out the RBT. And now the student is successful in inclusion setting and still receiving special education services, but no longer with the RBT, and maintaining long periods of time in inclusion with his peers. So, you know, once you have a taste of that kind of progression and work, then you're ready to go to continue the work. And then one more piece about shifting mindset. I mean, I could, you know, go on and on and on. I'll try not to. But, you know, I had this really wonderful experience at Pauilo School where I got to take 2 teachers under my wing. And they embraced the process. And one of them, they were, I would say they were both fairly reluctant in the beginning. And, you know, part of my coaching is, you know, trust me, it's counterintuitive. You know, we're going to unlearn some things. And as long as they were willing, you know, they started to see the results through the data. And so one of the teachers is a preschool teacher. And so we were seeing the kiddos that went through this process, like graduating out of special education, meeting all their goals, like no longer in special education at all, at the early, pre-K, kindergarten age. And, the other student too, I mean, it's just success story after success story after success story. And, we do encounter barriers. It's not perfect. Like we've had one recently, that not everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid sometimes. So we have to like pass it around, but and we really are investigating those. I will say it seems like it becomes there are more belief barriers and how open or closed off, the mindset is to the opportunity. So, but yeah, the results speak for itself.
Hey everyone, quick reminder here. You can get your CEUs the easy way right here through Behavioral Observations. Just head on over to behavioralobservations.com/get CEUs. Pick from tons of great podcast episodes. I think we have like 65 or 70 of them. Led by leaders in our field. Earn ACE-approved continuing ed while you listen. It's super easy to do. It's flexible. It's affordable with bulk discounts. I'm not going to judge if you need to stock up on CEUs. And you can earn while you do whatever you do while you're listening to podcasts. So if you want to learn more, again, go to behavioralobservations.com/get CEUs. All right, let's wrap up this podcast.
I think I can speak to some of the same things. I've seen a lot of kids go through the process with their teams and then fade out. Like we had one kid that was like a screen smasher, one of the first SBT kids, broke a bunch of iPads.
So was HRE just letting him like go nuts on
No,
screen?
so it was interesting, right?
Because this is my happy place.
It was kind of one of those where you have to do. Yeah, we talked about rage rooms and we tried to create proxies for destruction, but like the breaking glass obviously wasn't a thing because then he would touch it and then there was a potential for bleeding, and then like if you get a shard of broken glass, it's a problem. So there is a process, even like. We love the assent-based approach, but like there's also boundaries and hard no's, and there's a process for like enforcing those when you have a hard no and you have a boundary. But, this was a kid who was never given anything with a screen or being allowed screens, who's now was, generalized back to the homeschool from Po'okela, is around classrooms with computers and iPads and is not smashing them because also this kid loved playing like Minecraft and Google Maps and like loved being on the devices, but sort of had this love-hate relationship because of the topography of that one behavior. But student did successful and we were able to generalize the SBT intervention out, move them from the public separate facility back to the homeschool. And then a lot of other cases where...
Oh, wait, before we move on.
Yeah.
So what shut the behavior off when just out of curiosity? Because I'm sure like the listeners can be like... Don't move on. I need to know how to. I've got a kid who scratches screens.
It was more like once the iPad was broken, it was like it was removed. It's out of there, and then it's like a kind of a reset, like live to teach another day kind of a situation, and just and then like it was natural contingencies, right?
Okay,
like
got it.
We're out of iPads. Like, oh, sorry, dude, I know you really want to be on it, but it's broken, so like we don't have access to that. Let's find something else. And I think that over time, those one-off incidents sort of like happen less and less and less. And then I think too, FTF when we first did the process, and I think that they've changed the message at the time, and the message, the methods, there's methodological tweaks and improvements as they go, which is great because you're always learning as you're implementing. But I think we started off and it was like, oh, pick your hardest kid. And then like when you're learning a new process with your hardest kid, sometimes it's like, whoa, was that like maybe we pick a kid a little bit less intense, it would have been easier to learn. So I think that's something that, we are sort of learning. And I would just say like, I don't know if you're going to ask about like when it doesn't work as a question, but I would say there's like two cases I can think of where it sort of stopped. And I think both of those cases, and actually one I think is still going on, but it's sort of paused right now because that kid's actually participating. But it's HRE issues, and it's kids on a lot of medications with other health complications. And it's like, we can't turn behavior off because they're like not HRE. So like until and then like when they are finally like in a good state and it's kind of like more of a universal protocol of like, all right, if we keep things like this and we make reinforcers available and we have our schedule and we go along with things, like we're probably going to be okay. But if we present an EO right now, we know that this kid's not ready for an EO, so we're going to set him off. So like, let's just not until we can get HRE. So I think those have been sort of our boundary conditions as far as the kiddos, again, like the IDD, ASD, or the young kids with I feel like the young kids with sort of the more, I guess, like sort of ED or like ODD type classifications, they tend to be fast, right? Like they make progress really quick on it. From what I've known, I never did one myself with a kid like that, but
yeah, I mean, it'd probably transition to rule governed behavior. I would assume, instead of having to learn through direct acting contingencies.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's I think where we're hoping with the integration of like intentional language building programs and like structured, evidence-based curriculum to pick that stuff up faster. Maybe that'll speed up the process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not an actual implementer.
Okay.
I'm really a cheerleader of the team here. However, I will say that for me, a success story is that PFA SBT is now a verb, like you said, and that all of our district leaders are aware of it. They know what it is. They're talking about it, which is exciting. And I think, we're heading in the right direction. So.
All right. So I'm going to ask a question that I hate being asked. So I'm going to apologize in advance. And it's the lamest interview question. And but I think it's relevant in this case, when when someone says something like, well, where do you see this in 5 years? That's like, and again, I can't stand it when people ask me that question or whatever the context might be, because, I don't know what I'm going to have for dinner, in an hour. Right. But where do you see this going? Having said that, let me ask this horrible question, and I think this will be a good one to wrap up on. So it's what are you where do you what are some things you'd like to do? What do you think? Yeah. You got the mic, Josh.
Okay, I
Go,
guess
boss.
I'll talk. I would like. Ideally, I think, and in the panel today, Aletha talked about their project and like emphasizing, just really catching kids with low dose, skill building stuff before problem behavior develops. So I really think in the future, we would love to be able to scale that up. But also, I would like for our reactive strategies for when we do need to intervene on problem behavior to be at the place where we have people in every complex area or like even like per couple schools who are competent and who can go in and implement the process. And we have trainers available, at least on the complex area level, who can train up new teams. And that's like our system is there so that we actually have the infrastructure to just keep these interventions going. And also, I think continuing partnerships with like FTF for consultation and Emergent, and making sure that we're staying in touch with the current best practices and updating our trainers so that like everybody's disseminating like the best version, or we're even doing our own, like we're evaluating our own programs and learning internally of like, well, what works good for us. And so like having a system where we have that data and we have that capacity. I mean, that's kind of more like a dream. I don't know if that's like a realistic 5-year plan, but yeah, that would be my answer.
All right.
Yeah, Alicia's the best, so she'll figure it out.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think to piggyback off of what Josh was saying, I think what I hope to see is definitely a sustained framework that, like what we were talking about earlier, doesn't rely on any one person, but it's just the culture and just how the DOE operates. And this is just, how we evaluate students, how we engage and interact with students, and that, we bring the joy and kids love being in school.
I think what I like to see in the future is empowerment. I want to make sure that teachers feel empowered, and when they get students with challenging behaviors, they now have the tools to not just like, hey, we need to call for an IEP meeting, get the behavior analyst, at the table. I feel that, as we continue to build capacity moving towards sustainability, teachers will be empowered. And I think, we're going to start putting more restrictive environments into history books and not student confidential, because we are really going to meet them where they're at. That's where my hope is, because I think every kid deserves to be included in anything that they do. So stop, secluding them or pulling them out. And so I think this is the way we're going to do, because it's empowering, because we're going to bring joy to the student. We're going to bring joy back to teaching, because now it's like, I do SBT. I beg, like, okay, Josh, can I just that LB is going to be out for 2 weeks. I just got to support the kiddo because I have so much fun. And I complained to Dodi. I'm like, in this position, are we always going to be behind this computer? Because I can't do it. I need my HRE, going in there, working with the kiddos. Wow, it's already an hour and a half. I'm like, time flies when you're having so much fun. And that's what I want the teachers to feel. I want them to have the passion back, because they are the front lines, right? And that's how we're going to keep our keiki learning in a very fun way. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that when we embarked upon this, it was going to be a systematic procedure for bringing joy. And I didn't realize that joy was lacking to the degree that it is in our processes. And so and this is why I'm here with these fine people, because I'm so glad that those are the words they're saying is we can talk about the 5-year study and the data that we hope that emerges from it and the coaches on each island and this and that. But really, we're talking about our core values of living this beautiful life out here in Hawaii and bringing joy back to ourselves, to our students, to the school system. It's a broken system. And this is a part of the solution in the greater picture of shifting the entire culture of education. It's really starting right here. And this is going to catch on to not just our intensive support kiddos, but everyone is going to want to find their HRE and the DOE. And we're going to bring justice back, to our communities out here in a region that has historical trauma, and difficulties and challenges and barriers, and just reunite, unified together through these joyful, compassionate processes.
Well, if there are people listening on the mainland or elsewhere, I assume that you guys are hiring, I suppose, or there is room for more BCBAs in the state of Hawaii. Okay, all right, just want to make sure, and we'll maybe could
and the joy and the HRE. Everybody, we gotta spread the love, the joy, HRE. There's always room to share.
Awesome. All right, guys. I'm really, it's really been a treat to learn about all the amazing work you guys are doing. Thanks for taking some time to share it with the Behavioral Observations audience.
We know you have to run off to your surf session. We get it.
Yeah.
Mai Tai? Sorry.
Yeah.
The boat cruise, the booze cruise.
Yeah, it's been.
Because he might be going surfing.
It's been a treat visiting you guys. It's been a treat learning all about the great work that you're doing. And again, shout out to Self and Match, Behavior Live, the HABA committee who worked so hard to put this event together. And thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Behavioral Observations podcast with Matt Sikoria. You can find Matt's notes on this episode at www.behavioralobservations.com. We also invite you to stay connected with us on Facebook at facebook.com/behavioral observations and on Twitter at Behavior Podcast.